I saw them change him. I swear I did. The lights in the studio were so bright that night, but somehow the room still felt dark. James Carrey was standing on the stage, smiling like always. The crowd was laughing. The cameras were rolling. It looked normal. But behind the big red curtains, something was wrong. I was not supposed to be there. I was just an assistant. My name is Ethan Brooks. I worked late, cleaning up scripts and carrying coffee for people who never remembered my name. That night, I stayed longer than usual. And that is when I witnessed what they did to Jim Carrey. Two men in black suits walked up to him during a break. They were not security. I had worked there long enough to know every guard's face. These men had blank smiles. The kind that don't reach their eyes. They told him it was time. He stopped laughing. James looked confused at first. Then scared. His eyes moved fast, like he was looking for someone to help him. The crowd could not see. The cameras were off. I was hiding behind a stack of stage boxes. They guided him backstage. Not roughly. Not kindly either. Just calm. I followed. That was my mistake. They took him to a room I had never seen before. The hallway to it was dark and cold. The walls were grey and smooth, like metal. Inside the room, there was a chair in the middle. Bright lights above it. And a mirror that looked too thick to be normal glass. James asked them what was going on. One of the men said, "You've been off script." Off script. Those words made my stomach twist. James tried to laugh it off. "What script?" he said, still joking. But his voice was shaky. The other man pressed a button on the wall. The mirror lit up. And behind the glass, I saw people watching. Not just people. Important people. People in suits. People who looked bored. James turned around slowly. They told him he had forgotten his role. They told him he was saying things he was not supposed to say. They told him he needed to be corrected. That is when I saw them strap him to the chair. He fought at first. Not screaming. Just asking questions. But then the straps tightened on their own. I should have run. I should have called someone. But I stayed. The lights above him grew brighter. So bright I had to cover my eyes. He began to laugh. At first, it sounded like his normal movie laugh. Then it didn't. It was too loud. Too sharp. Too forced. One of the men adjusted a dial. James' face changed. I don't mean his expression. I mean his face. It twitched like a broken screen. His smile stretched too wide. His eyes looked empty, like someone turned off the lights inside his head. And then, the door behind me creaked. One of the men slowly turned his head. He looked straight at me. And smiled. That was the moment I realized. They knew I was there. And I don't think they ever planned to let me leave. Everything started 3 weeks before that night. Back then, things felt normal. I had just gotten the job at the studio in Los Angeles. It was my first big break. I was 22 and excited. My mom cried when I told her I would be working around celebrities. James Carrey was the nicest one there. He always said hello. He joked with the crew. He made even the janitors laugh. But after the first week, I noticed something strange. Sometimes, he would stop in the middle of a joke and just stare. Like he forgot where he was. Then he would blink fast and go right back to smiling. Once, I was bringing him coffee in his trailer. The door was slightly open. I heard him talking. Not on the phone. Just talking. "I won't say it again," he whispered. I knocked loudly so he would know I was coming. When I walked in, he smiled big. Too big. "Thanks, Ethan," he said, even though I never told him my name. That was the first time I felt uneasy. A few days later, there was a rehearsal. James was supposed to do a simple comedy bit. But halfway through, he changed the lines. He started talking about feeling watched. The audience laughed. They thought it was part of the act. But the producers did not laugh. I saw one of them whisper into his phone. That same day, I saw the two men in black suits for the first time. They stood near the back wall. Not clapping. Not smiling. Just watching. After that, James seemed different. Sometimes he was extra cheerful. Too cheerful. Like he was trying to prove something. Other times, he looked tired. Like he hadn't slept in days. One night, as I was leaving the studio, I saw him sitting alone on the edge of the stage. The lights were off. He did not notice me at first. He was staring at the big camera in front of him. "They're always recording," he said softly. I froze. "Who?" I asked. He turned slowly. His smile faded. "You don't see them yet," he whispered. That word stuck with me. Yet. The next week, strange things started happening. Scripts would change at the last minute. Lines would disappear. Whole jokes would be cut. James began missing rehearsals. Or he would show up late, looking shaken. Once, I saw him arguing with one of the men in black in the hallway. "I'm not a puppet," he said. The man only smiled. "You are an investment." That was the night everything fell apart. The live show was bigger than usual. Special guests. Bigger audience. More cameras. James walked onto the stage, waving and smiling. But when he started speaking, he didn't follow the script. He looked straight into the main camera. "If you're watching this," he said, "you need to know." The screen cut to black. The audience gasped. Emergency music started playing. The curtains dropped. And the two men in black were already walking toward him. That leads back to where I started. To the bright lights. The metal room. The chair. The mirror. The dial. And his face changing. When the man looked at me behind the door, my legs felt like ice. He raised one finger to his lips. "Shush," he whispered. The other man turned off the machine. James stopped laughing. His head dropped forward. The straps loosened. The room went quiet. Too quiet. Then slowly, James lifted his head. He smiled. But it wasn't the same smile. He looked at the mirror. He looked at the men. And then he looked directly at the door where I was hiding. And he winked. That wink did not feel friendly. It felt like a warning. One of the men began walking toward me. Step. 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 The metal floor echoed under his shoes. I tried to move. I couldn't. He reached for the door handle. And just as it started to turn, the lights in the hallway flickered. Then everything went completely dark. And in the darkness, I heard James laughing again. But this time, it was right behind me. The laughing was not coming from the stage anymore. It was right behind me. I could feel the breath on the back of my neck. Slow. Calm. Almost playful. The hallway was completely dark. The power had gone out. No lights. No exit signs. No sound except that soft, strange laughter. I did not turn around. I was too scared to move. "Ethan," the voice said softly. It sounded like James Carrey. But it also didn't. It was deeper. Slower. Like two voices speaking at the same time. "How do you know my name?" I whispered. The laughter stopped. For a second, there was silence. Then the emergency lights flickered on, dim and red. I turned slowly. James was standing there. But something about him was wrong. His smile was too perfect. His eyes did not blink. His head tilted slightly, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said gently. Behind him, at the end of the hallway, the two men in black suits stood watching. They were not chasing me. They were not running. They looked calm. Like they already knew what would happen next. My legs finally worked. I ran. I pushed past James and sprinted down the hallway toward the main studio floor. I could hear footsteps behind me, but they were slow. Not rushed. That scared me more. Why weren't they running? I burst through the backstage door and onto the empty stage. The audience was gone. The seats were empty. The lights above were off. The place felt abandoned. But it had only been minutes. "Hello," I shouted. No answer. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost dropped it when I pulled it out. There was no number on the screen. Just a message. "Stop running." I looked behind me. James stood at the edge of the stage. He wasn't chasing. He was watching. "You don't understand," he called out calmly. They can see through every camera, every phone, every screen. As soon as he said that, every big studio camera slowly turned toward me. One by one. Click, click, click. The red recording lights blinked on. I felt trapped. The giant screen behind the stage suddenly turned on. Static filled it at first. Then an image appeared. It was me. Live. Standing on the stage. And in the corner of the screen, I saw something else. A small countdown timer. 1:59. 1:58. What is that? I yelled. James slowly walked closer. It's the reset, he said softly. What reset? He smiled wider. They can't have witnesses. The timer kept counting down. 1:40. 1:39. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I ran toward the side exit of the studio. I pushed the door open and stumbled into the parking lot. It was night. The city lights of Los Angeles were glowing in the distance. Cars were parked everywhere. But something was wrong. Every car radio was on. All playing the same thing. Static. Then laughter. The same laughter I heard in the hallway. I covered my ears and ran to my car. My hands shook as I unlocked it. I jumped inside and slammed the door. The screen on my dashboard turned on by itself. The countdown appeared again. 0:59. 0:58. I tried to start the engine. It wouldn't turn over. The radio crackled. Then James' voice came through the speakers. You should have just forgotten what you saw. Tears filled my eyes. Why are they doing this? I shouted. The voice paused. Then answered. Because the show must go on. The timer hit 0:30. I threw open the car door and ran again, not knowing where I was going. The parking lot lights flickered. I looked back toward the studio building. On the roof, I saw silhouettes. People standing in a row. Watching. The timer reached 0:10. I dove behind a row of trash bins and covered my head. 0:03. 0:02. 0:01. Everything went black. I don't remember hitting the ground. I don't remember hearing an explosion. There was no loud noise. Just silence. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. I was lying in my bed. In my apartment. Sunlight came through the window. Birds were chirping. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. My phone buzzed. I slowly picked it up. There was a news alert. James Carrey delivers hilarious performance on live show last night. I sat up fast. Last night. I turned on my TV. The morning talk shows were replaying clips. James was on stage. Laughing. Telling jokes. Smiling. There was no blackout. No cut screen. No panic. Everything looked normal. I grabbed my keys and rushed to the studio. When I got there, it looked like any other day. Crew members were walking around. Cameras were being set up. I spotted one of the producers. Did something happen last night? I asked carefully. He looked confused. What do you mean? The blackout. The interruption. The men in suits. He frowned. There was no blackout. The show went perfectly. My stomach dropped. I walked slowly onto the stage. James was there, rehearsing. He saw me. And smiled. That same perfect smile. He walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You look tired, Ethan, he said kindly. His grip felt tight. Too tight. Rough night. I stared at him. What did they do to you? I whispered. His smile twitched for just a second. Then it returned. Nothing, he said. I'm exactly how I'm supposed to be. The cameras nearby slowly rotated toward us. Not quickly. Not suddenly. Just smoothly. Like they were alive. James leaned closer to my ear. You're still off script, he whispered. Cold fear ran through me. I stepped back. He straightened up and clapped his hands loudly. All right, everyone, he shouted cheerfully. Let's give them a great show today. The crew laughed. Everything looked normal again. But it wasn't. As I walked off stage, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Welcome back. I dropped the phone. When I picked it up, the screen was cracked. But I could still see the reflection. Behind me, standing just inches away, were the two men in black suits. I turned around slowly. They smiled at the same time. You adjusted well, one of them said calmly. Adjusted? I asked. The other man tilted his head. The reset worked. But not completely. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He leaned closer. You still remember? Before I could move, one of them pulled something small from his pocket. A silver device. With a single glowing button. James was watching from across the stage. Smiling. The man raised the device. And pressed it. A sharp ringing sound filled my ears. The world around me began to flicker. Like a broken screen. The lights stretched. The walls bent. James' face began to glitch again. His smile widened unnaturally. The crew members froze in place. Everything was shaking. And as the ringing grew louder, I realized something terrible. They weren't resetting the show this time. They were resetting me. And just before everything went dark again, I saw my own reflection in the studio camera. Smiling. The same perfect, empty smile. I was smiling. But I was not smiling. I could see my face in the camera lens. My mouth was stretched wide, my eyes open too big, like I was happy. But inside, I was screaming. I could not move my face. The ringing sound in my ears grew louder. The studio lights flickered again. The walls bent like soft rubber. The men in black suits stood perfectly still while the world around them twisted. Then everything snapped back into place. Silence. The ringing stopped. The lights were normal. The crew members were moving again. James was standing in front of me, looking calm. Ethan, he asked. You okay? His voice sounded normal. No double tone. No glitch. I touched my face quickly. My mouth felt normal. I was not smiling anymore. I think so, I said slowly. The two men in black suits were gone. Like they had never been there. My phone was in my hand. The screen was not cracked anymore. It looked brand new. I felt dizzy. Did something just happen? I asked. James gave a soft laugh. We're about to start rehearsal. That's what's happening. He walked back toward the center of the stage. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I looked around carefully. The cameras were facing forward, not at me. The crew members were chatting and adjusting lights. No one seemed strange. No one looked frozen. Maybe the reset worked. Maybe they erased it. Maybe I was fine now. I told myself to calm down. It had to be stress. Long hours. Bright lights. Too much thinking. I took a deep breath and stepped off the stage. The rest of the day passed quietly. Nothing strange happened. James rehearsed his lines. He joked with the staff. He looked like the same funny actor everyone loved. He even waved at fans outside when we left the studio. No men in black suits. No strange messages. No countdowns. That night, I went home and locked my door. I checked my phone. No unknown messages. No weird alerts. I turned on the TV. James was being interviewed on another show. He laughed and talked about his new project. Everything looked normal. Maybe it was over. Maybe I was free. I went to bed. At 3:17 a.m., my eyes opened. I didn't know why. The room was dark. But I felt like someone was watching me. I slowly turned my head toward my bedroom door. It was open. I always close it. My heart started beating faster. Hello. I whispered. No answer. I sat up slowly. The hallway light was on. I never leave it on. I got out of bed and walked toward the door. Each step felt heavy. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped into the hallway. And froze. At the end of the hallway, standing near the living room, was a man in a black suit. He wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. He was just standing there. Watching me. You're not real, I whispered. He smiled. We didn't finish, he said calmly. My stomach dropped. Before I could move, another man stepped out from my kitchen. Also in a black suit. "You adapted faster than expected," the second man said. "How are you here?" I asked, my voice shaking. The first man tilted his head. "We told you. You're off script." My mind raced. What script? What does that even mean? The second man raised his hand slowly. And that's when I noticed something horrifying. Behind them, standing in my living room, was James. But this James was different. His head was tilted too far to one side. His smile was stretched wider than possible. His eyes were completely black. Not dark brown. Not shadowed. Black. "I tried to warn you," he said softly. His voice echoed strangely, like it was coming from far away and very close at the same time. "You weren't supposed to remember." I backed up slowly until I hit the wall. "This isn't real," I whispered to myself. The first man stepped closer. "It's very real." The lights in my house began to flicker. The walls around me shimmered slightly, like a screen glitching. Suddenly, I heard something else. Clapping. Slow. Steady. Coming from everywhere. I looked around wildly. The sound grew louder. And then, my living room wall disappeared. Just vanished. Behind it was not my neighbor's apartment. It was a giant audience. Rows and rows of people sitting in darkness. Watching. Me. Bright studio lights turned on above my head. I shielded my eyes. The black-suited men stepped aside. James walked forward. The audience began to laugh. Not happy laughter. Forced laughter. Like a laugh track from a TV show. "You see now?" James asked. I shook my head. No, this can't be." He leaned close. "You're part of the show." My legs felt weak. "What show?" He smiled wider. "The one where we see how long it takes before you break." The audience clapped again. Tears filled my eyes. "I don't want to be part of this," I said. James' expression changed for a split second. Something sad flickered across his face. But it was gone quickly. "No one ever wants to be," he replied softly. The black-suited men grabbed my arms. I tried to pull away. The audience leaned forward in their seats. The laugh track grew louder. "Wait!" I shouted. "Why me?" James looked at me carefully. "Because you saw what they did to me." My breath caught. "What did they do to you?" For the first time, his smile dropped completely. "They rewrote me," he said quietly. "They changed my thoughts. My words. My reactions. Every laugh you hear isn't mine. Every joke is approved. Every smile is programmed." He looked toward the audience. "And they're watching to make sure I never go off script again." The black-suited men tightened their grip. "And now," one of them said calmly, "we'll make sure you don't either." The audience stood up together. Every single person. At the same time. They began chanting. "Reset. Reset. Reset." The sound shook the room. I struggled harder. "Please." I yelled. James stepped closer again. His black eyes stared into mine. "I tried to resist too," he whispered. Then he placed his hand on my forehead. The world around me shattered like glass. The audience disappeared. The walls collapsed into darkness. The chanting echoed far away. Everything spun. I felt like I was falling forever. Then, I was standing on the studio stage again. Bright lights. Live audience. Cheering. James stood next to me, smiling normally. A host was introducing us. And here with James Carrey tonight is his longtime assistant, Ethan. The crowd clapped loudly. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a suit. A microphone was clipped to my jacket. I felt calm. Too calm. The host turned to me. "So Ethan, what's it like working with James?" I opened my mouth to answer. And I heard myself laugh. It sounded perfect. Natural. Happy. "It's amazing," I said smoothly. The audience laughed. James looked at me. His smile was perfect. His eyes were dark. But just for 1 second. Deep inside. I felt something scratching at the back of my mind. A memory. Of black suits. Of resets. Of a broken world behind a wall. The host asked another question. I answered perfectly. The crowd clapped again. Everything felt normal. But as the cameras zoomed in close to my face, for a split second, my smile twitched. And somewhere deep inside my head, I heard a faint whisper. You're still off script.